My dad owns a 24-hour gas station in our hometown. He told me if he caught me coming home drunk again, then he would force me to work the graveyard shift. I didn't listen and I had to be punished. The word punished doesn't even begin to describe my job. It is a 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. shift with a lot of downtime between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. I mostly use that time to take inventory, restock shelves, and wait for nothing to happen. On the other hand, some people just pump gas and go on their way without even approaching me. Depending on the person, I am more than all right with that. The only night of the week that has any kind of excitement are Tuesday nights. That's when Trevor the beer guy comes in. He's always nice to me, and he is not bad to look at. He sometimes sticks around for over an hour just so that we can talk. He works for the distribution center, so he tells me a lot of times that there's not much going on and that I am the highlight of his shift. Tuesday came back around again, and I was waiting for his arrival. He usually comes during the downtime of the store, which is about 4 a.m. The usual happens: people buy candy bars, pump gas, and waste money on scratch-off tickets. Then I restock the shelves and wait for my roadside Romeo to appear. Like clockwork, he pulls into the parking lot and parks behind the store with his 18-wheeler. He hops out and greets me like always. "Are you having fun?" I always give him the same response: "Oh yeah, it's always a hoot around here." He always tells me how much he is unloading, and since I am his last stop of the evening, he brings it in for me and stocks the beer. After, he usually tells me about his day before he leaves. The same routine as always occurs, except this time he tells me he needs a couple of things for me. The first thing he needed was a bag of flaming hot Cheetos. The second is my phone number. I told him I could only give him one of those things. He began to look embarrassed as he put his head down. I told him that we were out of flaming hot Cheetos. He popped his head back up and snickered. I pulled out some printer paper and wrote my phone number down. He playfully told me that he wanted to check to see if it was legit. So he typed my number in his phone and texted me a simple "Howdy." He heard my phone buzz in my back pocket for confirmation. He said he was looking forward to talking to me on other days besides Tuesdays going forward. He smiled and winked at me before he left. I saw him get into his truck on the security cameras as he drove off. My heart was fluttering. So I went back to the rest of my boring shift and waited for it to end. About an hour later, my phone vibrated and Trevor had texted me. His text said, "How is the beer doing?" I responded to him rather quickly, "The beer is still here." I'm a poet and didn't know it. The 3 dots kept flashing as he was responding. He said, "It's always a pleasure to service store number 103. I told him that the store wouldn't be the same without him. Some time went by before he texted me back. I just assumed that he was driving back to the warehouse or another pit stop. He responded to me saying that he forgot his inventory sheet and asked me if he could come back and grab it. I thought he was just looking for an excuse to see me again, so I told him to go ahead. I got giddy with excitement waiting for him to return. About an hour went by and I saw on the security monitor that he was approaching the back door. He walked in, so I stood behind the counter and anticipated him popping out from the back. When I heard the footsteps get closer, I asked him, "Did you forget your paperwork, or did you just need an excuse to come back and see me?" He emerged from the back corridor and a masked man appeared. It wasn't Trevor. He started running towards me with a crowbar in his hand. As he swung at the glass counter and shattered it, I ducked just in time. My heart was racing as I grabbed my phone and ran to the women's room and barricaded myself in there. As I unlocked my phone, I received a text from Trevor that said, "I know where you are." My blood turned cold. I didn't want him to hear me, so calling the police was out of the question. I decided to text my dad and tell him what was going on. A couple of minutes went by and Dad texted me back and said the police would be there in 15 minutes. All I had to do was evade and survive. As soon as I read my dad's text, I could hear laughter on the other side of the door. I had expected him to start breaking the door down, but he just knocked menacingly. "Is everything all right in there?" he said. I told him to please leave, just take whatever he wants, and leave. He told me it wasn't that simple because he wanted me. He claimed to be Trevor, but he wasn't. He said he wanted to kiss me, marry me, and have babies. I was starting to get grossed out. When I told him to fuck off, then he started breaking the door down. I looked around to find something to defend myself. The only thing in there that was useful was a can of Lysol. So the second that he broke the door, he bent down and tried to grab me. When he got into range, I doused him in the face with the spray. He screamed in agony and began rubbing his eyes. I slipped between his legs and crawled out of the restroom. I ran back to the front to grab the handgun that my dad kept under the register. It wasn't there. I heard him say down the corridor, "Looking for this?" He was holding the gun in the air and cocked it. He then started walking to me very slowly. He told me to get down on my knees and that it should be a familiar position for me. All I could do was shed a single tear as I did what he said. He continued walking toward me and telling me what he was going to do to me, or rather what I was going to do to him. I poked my head up and saw Trevor standing behind him. He put his index finger to his lips to indicate that I needed to stay quiet. I played along and told the guy that I would do anything for him just as long as he let me go. He told me he would after he finished. He got about 3 feet in front of me when Trevor pounced on him. They had a scuffle as they were fighting for the gun. Trevor punched him in the abdomen a few times while the masked man punched Trevor square in the crotch. Trevor bent over in agony as the masked man laughed and told Trevor goodbye. Before he can pull the trigger, Trevor picks up the crowbar that the masked man dropped and knocked the gun out of his hand. They were on the floor, trying to get the gun again. Trevor was able to strong-arm himself to point the gun directly into the man's face and pull the trigger. A splatter of blood hit the floor, followed by the masked man. He was dead. Trevor immediately dropped the gun and ran to see if I was all right. I told him I was, and he hugged me. I could hear sirens in the distance. He looked at me and said, "You're right, it's always a hoot around here."
If you ask most people what one of their biggest fantasies in life is, chances are a big percentage of them would say winning the lottery. I had an experience that was worthy of responding to this r/ask subreddit. I'm just a regular guy who lives paycheck to paycheck and can't afford most luxuries. I'm lucky if I can upgrade my meal to a large combo at Burger King most weeks. Hell, my bulldog named Tucker eats better than I do most days. I walked into a gas station to pump some gas in my car. I could only afford $10. So I put 10 on pump number 9, and as I was walking out, a vagrant walked in. Someone had given him enough money for him to get at least something to eat. However, he used the money to buy a lottery ticket instead. I just rolled my eyes as I walked out. A few moments later, while I was at the pump, he walked up to me and asked me for a couple of bucks. I told him I saw what you did in there, so go find somebody else to tell your sob story. He flipped me off and walked away. As he was walking away, he dropped his lottery ticket. I tried to get his attention, but again he just flipped me off and kept walking. So I put the ticket in my pocket. Finders keepers, right? The next drawing wasn't for a couple of days, so when I got home, I put the ticket on my kitchen table next to my ashtray. I figured it would be a total bust, but stranger things happen all the time. So, I fed Tucker and myself a frozen chicken fried steak dinner and went to bed. The next day at work was about as routine as usual. We were understaffed, and my boss was a total prick. He's one of those bosses that blames the younger generation for not wanting to work, instead of just looking in the fucking mirror. So he informed me that I would be training the new guy. He was a college dropout who got his girlfriend pregnant, so he had to get a job. He was a nice kid besides that, and it gave me the feeling that he was going to soon be my replacement. I worked my shift and went home. The only difference about tonight is that on Thursdays I like to watch Thursday night football. It was a decent matchup this week, so I knew that I could turn my mind off for a few hours anyway. Instead of a frozen dinner, I treated myself with a Little Caesars hot and ready. Life of luxury, baby. Friday was upon me, and the drawing was that evening. So at least I had that to look forward to. I grabbed my lunchbox and thermos and went to work. Luckily, it was payday, because I didn't have that much gas left. $10 only goes so far these days. As soon as I got to work, my boss wanted to speak with me. He sat me down and informed me that my thoughts were true. The new guy was replacing me just after a couple of days. He could work way more hours and with less pay so that the machine could keep grinding. He also said that he is firing me on a Friday because disgruntled employees are less likely to do something harmful. I told him how I felt about him as I grabbed my things and walked out the door. I sat in my car, absolutely fuming. I decided to come up with a game plan to start looking for other jobs the second that I got home. I'm sure there are plenty of positions out there that would hire me, or I could go work for my cousin laying cement. I just couldn't believe how quickly my day went to shit. I still, however, needed gas. I pulled up to the gas station pump and walked in. My check had already hit direct deposit, so I could splurge and get $20 worth of gas this time, which is only about a third of a tank. Once again, as I was walking out, the vagrant walked in. He accused me of stealing his lottery ticket, but I informed him I tried to give it back and he was being an asshole about it. He denied it and continued to call me a thief. I pulled out my wallet and threw a $10 bill at him and told him to kiss my ass, and that we were even. I pumped my gas and went home. As I walked through the door, Tucker greeted me. I could always count on him to be a bright spot in my day. I fed him and just ate the lunch that I had in my lunchbox. I turned on the local news and waited for the lottery numbers to be announced. If fate or God existed, now would be the time to reveal that they did. I lost my job and could very quickly lose my apartment and even my car. I needed this. Toward the end of the evening news, the news anchor announced the numbers. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw every last number match the piece of paper in my hand. I did it. I had won the lottery. All $45 million of it. My heart started racing and my head started spinning. I picked up Tucker and jumped up and down with excitement. I no longer had to worry about eating crappy food, or about a job that did not care if I lived or died. My life was changing for the better. I could leave this dingy apartment in Tucker and I could live a life of luxury. There was just one snag. I had to return to the gas station where I won the ticket. That's where the vagrant would be, and if he found out that I had his winning ticket, all hell would break loose. The very next day I went to the gas station. I privately told the cashier about what happened and he was over the moon. With the lottery, the store that distributed the winning ticket gets a percentage. It wasn't the best place, but maybe they could make some renovations with the money. He told me I needed to make an appointment with the state lottery office. Once again, as I was walking out, the vagrant walked in. He called me a son of a bitch and accused me once again of stealing his ticket. I told him that there was no possible way he could prove that it was his ticket. He informed me that he plays the same numbers over and over. The numbers are significant, like the year of his wedding anniversary, or his number when he played basketball for the local high school. You know, numbers like that. I told him to drop it at better luck next time as I walked out. I flipped him off for a change. I made my appointment with the office, and I decided to do the monthly checks versus the big payout. That way I don't have to pay as much in taxes. However, Uncle Sam did take damn near 50%. So that $45 million turned into $22.5 million. I wasn't mad, because I still was a millionaire. Of course, the first thing that I did was buy a much better house for me and Tucker to live in. It wasn't the most expensive house in the city, but it wasn't cheap either. I decided I was going to officially retire from working and enjoy my life the way I was supposed to. The new home that I moved into needed a few improvements. One of them was that I wanted a pool. So my cousin came out and dug a hole for me, and he was going to return at a later date to fill it in with concrete. After about a week, I was fully moved in. I didn't have much moving from a one-bedroom apartment into a four-bedroom house. As I was lying in bed, about to fall asleep, one evening, my doorbell rang. I was confused and angry about who was doing such a thing at 11 p.m. I opened the door to see the vagrant standing there. He still insisted that I stole his money and that this house was his. He threatened to squat in the backyard. As he took off running towards the back, I caught up with him and told him if he didn't leave that I would call the police. He then proceeded to flip me off and throw clumps of dirt at me. At first, I was annoyed, but then one of them exploded right into my eye. I instantly saw red. Next to the hole where the pool was going to be was a shovel. I picked up that shovel and I cracked him against the head. His unconscious body fell to the very bottom of the hole. He eventually came to a couple of minutes later and attempted to climb out. When he got to the top, I hit him again. That time I believe it was the finishing blow. I proceeded to pick up the shovel and started pouring dirt over his body. When my cousin came by the next day to fill the hole with concrete, I didn't say a word. He was a vagrant. Nobody would miss him, I told myself. Each morning, I drink my coffee while looking out my kitchen window and just stare at the pool and smile to myself. This is the life that I deserve. Why should some dirty homeless guy have millions of dollars when I deserve so much more?
Being a long-haul trucker has its perks, but some of the setbacks are very alarming. My name is Scott, and I have to get this story off my chest, so I am telling it to you. My job is to drive from San Diego, California to Miami, Florida. I work for 2 weeks straight, and then get 2 weeks off. I'd like to think that it is a good work-life balance, but what do I know? I would have to stop frequently, but my favorite stop was San Antonio, Texas. Not only because it was my midpoint, but I didn't mind the tacos and senoritas. However, that is, unfortunately, where the story begins. I always stopped at the same gas station just not only to fill up my tank but to grab a shower and a bite to eat as well. My truck had a bed in the back of the cabin, so I would just sleep in the lot of the gas station. I arrived one evening and after grabbing a shower and eating Carl's Jr. that's connected to the gas station, I was heading back to my truck when I was approached by a woman. She's what we call in the industry a lot lizard, pretty much a gas station prostitute. I had rejected women dozens of times, however, she seemed different. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was something. She wasn't a bad-looking blonde, and her latex outfit was very form-fitting. I guess my loneliness just got the best of me and she followed me into my truck. She told me the going rate, and I accepted. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was the best human contact I've had in years. After we finished, she asked if she could spend the night in my truck with me. Again, I usually say no, but I could have used the company. So I agreed that she could stay, but as soon as the morning hit, she had to go. She promised to honor that deal. She rested her head on my chest and fell asleep. I followed suit a few moments later. I woke up the next morning and she was nowhere in sight. No note and nothing missing from my truck. I considered it a successful venture. I also felt so refreshed and raring to hit the road. I walked into Carl's Jr. again and grabbed a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit and a coffee before I hit the road. I was so hungry that I scarfed it down and chugged my coffee like it was water. I did my outside inspection of the truck and I was on my way to Miami. I turned on the Brohio podcast as I pulled out of the lot. A few hours went by and I began to feel a little ill and weak all of a sudden, but I shook it off because I wasn't able to stop for another 5 hours. I just assumed it was the breakfast biscuit, or maybe even the coffee. I wasn't quite sure, but I hadn't felt this awful in a long time. The next 5 hours went by as slow as a snail. I finally got to my next stop, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There I found the closest restroom and proceeded to puke my guts out. I could hardly stand during it. It was not looking good because I still had over 13 hours to go. I just kept on trucking, grabbing some Pepto-Bismol and a 12-pack of Sprite. Tallahassee was my next chance to stop. I knew I could make it there. After taking shots of Pepto like I was on spring break, and drinking the Sprite like it was my lifeblood, I felt a little bit better as I pulled into the truck stop in Tallahassee. I bought more Sprite and some crackers. I still felt about the same as I did in Baton Rouge, but not worse, so I considered that a plus. I had over 7 hours to go, and I was home free. I pulled into the warehouse where I had to unload the shipment. I walked into the business to tell them I was there to unload. They were happy about my arrival, as I backed into the loading bay. As I unlocked my trailer, and to my surprise, it wasn't just freight that was in there, but the woman I had slept with in San Antonio. She had been in my trailer this whole time. How she got in there, I had no idea. I told her to get in the truck while I did my job. I unloaded, checked my invoice, and left. I returned to my truck and she was sitting in the passenger seat. I had asked her what the hell she was doing and wanted to know why she followed me all the way here. She informed me that it is beyond my understanding of why she did what she did. I told her to explain it to me like I was a 5-year-old. Because not only was I confused, but I was quite angry because she could have been killed being in that trailer for too long. She told me that she was indeed a succubus. I did not take her seriously and I thought about just leaving her right there. She insisted that she was telling the truth. I still was skeptical. She then asked me if I was feeling all right, followed by asking if I had been throwing up or if I felt very ill. I told her that I hadn't been feeling well since I woke up from the evening with her. She told me that my sickness was a side effect of having sex with the succubus. She trained me to gain strength. For her to survive and for me to survive, we both need each other from now on. I would eventually die because of her, and she would eventually die if I didn't give her what she needed. So instead of us both dying, we relied on each other. I hate her for doing this to me, but I didn't want to die, not at the time anyway. I now have a permanent passenger princess for my routes. However, I also have a permanent parasite that sits pretty in the passenger seat of my truck. I now officially hate sex. She has drained me out of libido, happiness, and patience. More and more each day I think about driving my truck over a cliff, just knowing I was taking her with me straight to hell.
I work part-time inside of a Quiznos sub that's connected to a gas station. A lot of interesting things happen to me throughout my shifts, but there are certain things that you just can't shake. This story is one of them. My job mainly consists of doing prep work before the store opens. After opening, I usually hop on the line and make the sandwiches. It's not the best job in the world, but it is fairly easy. My coworker Melanie and I have started a friendship since I started working there. She is a few years older than me, but she took me under her wing and treats me like a little brother. She is very nice, but she can be a complete smartass sometimes. It amazes me that she hasn't been fired on multiple occasions. Our manager, Rich, is more of a hands-off manager. He likes to tell us what to do and then disappear for hours. Last week Melanie told me that he worked a total of 30 minutes one day. Must be nice to work salary. I guess he's also a complete jerk, and anytime he is in the store, he really brings the mood down. Corporate showed up 1 week for an inspection, and of course Rich was there the entire time, I was told. Melanie ran circles around him when corporate would ask questions about the store. She should really be running the show, but Rich exists. They told us that they wanted to implement a new meat to our menu. They didn't specify what it was, but it gave me big mystery meat from cafeteria lunches vibes. We called it the Puerto Rican panini. I figured it was some kind of land animal because it showed up in the same plastic as our roast beef and ham. Nonetheless, I would slice it every morning. I snuck a taste one time when Rich wasn't looking, and it didn't taste too bad. It actually tastes like all of our meats combined into one. Instead of chicken, a taste of ham, salami was there too, and had a turkey texture. Maybe this new meat could be a huge selling point for us going forward. I had hoped anyway, because I didn't want to lose a job due to the restaurant closing. A couple of days went by and I finally decided to try the new sandwich. I didn't know what it was, nobody did but corporate, and their lips were sealed. I had just tasted it that one time, but I hadn't tried it on a sandwich yet. We served it with lettuce, tomato, mayo, and pepper jack cheese. The ad recommended it toasted. So I tried it, and it was delicious. I had it every day at the end of my shift for a week, until I discovered what it was. I overheard corporate talking to Rich one day as he was asking what the meat was. He mentioned he was uncomfortable serving meat if he didn't know what was in it. They told him to stop asking or they would fire him. I kind of hoped he would keep asking, but he dropped it. They had decided to take a lunch break and go to a fancy restaurant just north of town. They had a folder filled with papers that I assumed had the meat contents in it. As they were leaving, Rich locked the door, but little did he know that Melanie had a spare key on her key ring. So I asked her if I could use her keys to refill the paper towels in the men's room. She didn't question it and gave me her whole set. So I took them to the back office and unlocked the door. On the desk was the folder. I thumbed through the papers. Most of them were things like P&L statements or websites to reorder parts for the equipment, but I did eventually get to the paper about the sandwich, which felt like hours. I took a quick photo of it with my phone and put the papers back the way I found them in the folder. I quickly left the office and locked the door. Since my shift was over in about an hour, I waited to see what was on the paper. So I got home and instantly pulled up the photo on my phone. It had a breakdown of the portion sizes of each ingredient, and at the very bottom it had a description about the meat. I had to do a double take when I read what it was. It was chupacabra meat. I was sick to my stomach and threw my sandwich away in my trash. I thought they were just a myth, like an honest politician or the flying spaghetti monster. I couldn't believe what I was reading as I continued in the paragraph. It stated that the meat had an addictive chemical in it that was on the same level as nicotine, which explained why I had to have it every day this week. I had told Melanie about it the next day, and she just blew me off. I'm afraid to tell corporate about it because I know I'll be in trouble for sure. So I decided to tell my story here to you guys on Reddit. So if you ever stumble into a Quiznos and ask for the Puerto Rican panini, consider getting something else. You'll thank me later.